They bound her to the post as people used to bind hope to a tombstone. Tight, cold, and for the last time. But this time somebody was looking on. And he'd had enough looking on. It was the summer of '79 in Silverthorne, New Mexico. A heat so hot it could split wood and fog out the past. And there she stood, Elena Redbird. Barefoot, battered, bones as sharp as truth, tied under a crooked saloon sign like a prize no one deserved. Her eyes never flinched, never blinked. She was not seeking mercy. She just stood, still and hard, like pain had long since ceased to intimidate her. Men jeered. Coins clinked against tables. Whiskey flowed from open mouths. Garrett Moss, the saloon boss with a belly full of rot and a grin full of teeth, bellowed, $1 for the savage. The crowd laughed like hyenas around fresh meat. Jesse Callahan did not budge. Not initially. He stood at the periphery of it all. Coat in disarray, eyes sunken. A man looking at a ghost he never wanted returned. It had been 5 years since Jesse buried Sarah. 5 years since the sound of the world grew quieter. And he was pleased it did. No conversation, no others, but fences, dust, and quiet. But what shattered him wasn't her bruises. It was how she stood. Like her pride was the one thing they hadn't been able to take. And he couldn't tear his eyes away. He said nothing. Simply strode right through the commotion. Produced a silver coin from his pocket. Dropped it into Garrett's greasy palm. And released the rope. Her wrists were raw and red. She never said thank you. Didn't even flinch. She simply walked with him. Like the rest of the world had disappeared. On the ranch, he left her the barn. A cot. A bucket of water. No guarantees, no inquiries. He did not consider himself to be a hero. But that evening, the quiet he had once clung to like armor, it turned against him. The wind wailed through the shutters. Something scraped against the walls. And low in his chest, something stirred. Not fear, not guilt, but a sensation he'd interred with Sarah. He stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't alone. And sometimes, the ones we save turn out to be the ones who save us. The barn was old, reeked of hay, sweat, and the specters of hard years. But to Elena, it was a palace. She didn't ask for more, didn't ask for anything, just staked out her corner of the world, and met Jesse's eyes like she knew. He was just as broken as she was. He hardly said a word in the first few days. Didn't even recall why he brought her home. Perhaps guilt, perhaps anger, or perhaps he was tired of watching the world decay without doing anything about it. But then, something quiet occurred. Left a bone-handled comb on the porch one morning. Discovered it in a drawer Sarah had long ago occupied. Didn't amount to anything. But returning from mending fence posts, the comb was missing, and his patchy old flannel shirt with a tear at the elbow had been sewn back up tight, the threads tight like stitches shared among themselves. The following day, he left a piece of blue calico. At night, he discovered his axe handle wrapped in rawhide, solid and strengthened. They never mentioned it. But every day something went on between them. A gift, a gesture, an unspoken exchange of trust. And that silence, it ceased to be empty, began to sound like music, soft, slow, the patter of rain after a long, harsh drought. But the rest of the world took notice. Gossip sharpened into cuts. Saloon old-timers leaned forward, spewing venom regarding the engine girl remaining on Callahan's property. Mothers yanked children close when Jesse passed by. The store clerk, who once was hasty to bid us sir, now merely nodded schemily. He sensed it, like barbed wire coiled around his chest. They believed he'd softened. Some speculated that he'd lost his mind. And the worst of it, he began to care. He saw her one evening, returning water from the well, in the corral, kneeling in the earth. Not weeping, not praying, simply creating shapes. Perhaps a flower, perhaps a memory. He didn't inquire. But for the first time in years, he wished to. Sometimes love doesn't start with words. Sometimes it begins in silence. Deep, quiet, and loud enough to be felt. But out here in the West, peace was a thin thing. Someone was going to shatter it. And Jesse Callahan didn't know. The real storm was yet to come. Jesse had spotted it that morning when he was patching the fence, shirt drenched with the sun. He looked up and stiffened. Elena stood close to the corral, stooping low, collecting herbs. Her dress, belted at the waist, inched just enough to steal his breath. He spun around quickly, growled a curse, and slapped his own thumb with the hammer. She didn't laugh, just stood, looked up into his eyes, calm, steady, as if she'd already endured his gaze before it even had a chance to hit hers. No fear, no shame, only that still, unbreakable strength she always held in the back of her eyes. That evening, sleep refused to come. Each groan of the barn, each change in wind was her moving around in the darkness. Jesse was no longer young, no longer some boy running from ghosts. But this was different. This was danger. He dreamed of Sarah, his wife, the garden, the way she hummed when planting tomatoes. But as she turned, it wasn't Sarah anymore. It was Elena. He woke up with sweat pouring off him, racing heart like he'd crossed a boundary he didn't intend. The following night, the sun set low, casting gold over the ranch. Elena came to him with the repaired bridle in her hand. Her fingers touched his wrist, soft, a fraction of a second too long. It froze him. The barn had the scent of hay, worn leather, and something older even than sorrow, older even than guilt. She had on the blue calico he'd left her weeks before. It was a perfect fit, like it had been designed just for her. He went for the bridle but stopped. His hand wanted to go further, smooth that one stray strand of hair away from her cheek. Then she spoke his name, soft, for the first time ever. He leaned in, almost kissed her, almost, but the moment was broken. A sudden crack outside, a snapping of a branch, a moving shadow close to the corral. They both stood stock-still, and they both sensed that wasn't a coyote. The past does not knock lightly. It bursts in. Jesse let the bridle fall and picked up the lantern. He moved into the darkness, eyes scanning the corral rim. The horses were agitated. Something or someone was out there. Then he caught sight of it. A flash of light-off metal. A rifle barrel. "Tala down," he whispered. She was already at his side. Bare feet, steady, wild as ever. They huddled behind piles of hay. Pounding hearts. "Who is there?" Jesse shouted. Voice steady. Clenched jaw. Then came the voice.
Familiar.
"Rotten. Garrett Moss. You can't hide her forever, Jesse," he slurred, his voice soaked in whiskey and venom. "Town says you're sinning with that savage." The word slapped the air like a whip. Jesse's fist curled, knuckles white. Tala didn't even flinch, simply brushed his hand, firm, grounding. "Leave my land, Garrett," Jesse growled. "She's no one's to claim." But Garrett hadn't come alone. Bootsteps encircled the barn, 3, perhaps 4 more. Rifles cocked in darkness. Jesse's mind ran. The cabin was too far away. The rifle inside out of reach. He had nothing but his knife. But Tala? She didn't shrink. She reached up and took a pitchfork from the wall and stood tall, fearless. Garrett barked, "Last chance, Callahan. Hand her over, or we burn it all." Jesse moved into the light, knife in hand, voice steady. "You're trespassing. You leave now, or you don't leave at all." And then hell broke loose. Garrett's threat hadn't even stopped ringing through the night before Tala moved. She swung the pitchfork fast, clean cut Garrett across the arm. Just a graze, but enough to send him howling back in agony. Chaos followed. One of his men rushed the barn, rifle raised, but Jesse intercepted him first. Tackled him hard. The knife flashed. The rifle crashed. Fist connected with flesh. Decades of silence, guilt, and repressed anger spat out of every punch. Another man rushed in. Tala deflected him with precision as if the land itself flowed through her. A boot almost caught Jesse's jaw. He rolled shoulder first into another man, slamming him into the barn wall. And then Garrett came back wild and bleeding, pistol in hand. He took aim at Tala. Jesse's blood turned to ice. He rushed, pushing her out of the way just as the gun went off. The bullet skimmed his shoulder, white fire agony. But he didn't let up. He slammed into Garrett. They rolled on the hay, fists and rage, two men fighting like only one could survive. Tala dived for the dropped gun, grabbed it, just in time before another man brought up his rifle. "Drop it," she commanded, voice low, unshakable. He stood still, then retreated slowly. Garrett, bleeding, hacking, laughed harshly. "You think it's over? Town won't allow you to keep her." But Jesse did not respond. He didn't have to, for standing next to him, pistol firm, eyes unflinching, Tala was not something to be held. She was someone to stand next to. The next morning, the Texas sky ran gold. Jesse's shirt was stiff with blood. But her hand, her touch, was still warm against his arm. She wore that blue calico like armor. Pride in every breath. Eyes on the horizon. They stood side by side. Two scarred souls who decided to fight. Not just survive, but belong. Because healing doesn't come like lightning. Comes in stitches. In silence shared. In stands taken when no one else will. And perhaps, just perhaps, love is not a whisper in the dark. Perhaps it's a vow said when the shooting ends. So I'll pose this question to you. What would you risk? For peace of mind? For the right to defend someone without apology? Does the past hold us back? Or can we write something new? If this tale touched something in you, even just a spark, leave a comment with where you're listening from. And if you're attracted to stories of grit, love, and redemption etched into dust and thunder, subscribe button it is. More than you know. Because out here on the plains, the wind's always carrying another story. And we'll be here right in time to share it.